Well, I'm a silly goose. Um, I guess in a good way. My quick thought for today, or quick thoughts for today, this week's podcast, are going to reflect on continuing the conversation that I had last time, where I spoke about the past decade of my art practice, or just how my art practice has developed, and I didn't really talk about the future. I just kind of talked about how it started and where it is now, and didn't really get into what I would like for it in the future to be like. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I've thought about this a lot, very casually, and not so much in like a really formal context. But every once in a while, when I think about like, oh, what's your dream house? What's your dream house? I'm like, oh, I want a home studio. And I've gone back and forth on that a lot because I like compartmentalizing things. So it's like, I don't know, maybe home isn't the best place for a studio. I've had that happen. Like, I've had that before, like once, where I had like a small bedroom as a studio / office space, and it was nice to be able to just have it there. Like, I didn't waste any time commuting. I didn't have to pay extra. Well, I mean, I guess you kind of pay extra rent for it because you're paying for an extra bedroom, and that costs money. But it just is into the cost of the home in a way, and just like I don't have to get ready and go. Like, it's just there. So that was nice. But also, when my studio was where I also lived, it was easier to get distracted because I can go and make a snack. I can go and take a nap if I'm really tired. Like, there's just more distractions there, and I don't want that. So that's kind of why I'd like a separate space. But then again, it's just a discipline thing. So I don't know. It's tough. I feel like if I had a studio space that was the most ideal thing was if it was slightly removed from the house. So it was like not in a garage, but if it was like a separate little building. Like, again, this is a dream scenario that I have like a separate little like a big garage, but it was just meant to be a studio space. It's insulated, but also has ventilation for spray painting. I could have a couch in there, a little mini fridge or whatever, like things where that would be convenient for me. I mean, like I just made myself some tea, and I mean, I have little comfort things in the studio I have now. I mean, like the love seat is so much. It's pertinent to my artistic practice in a way because I need a space to just relax and read and just chill and not be 100% working on art all the time in a physical way, but also thinking about art and reading about art and just a place to chill without having to leave. I mean, I've taken a few naps there once or twice, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, I mean, I have like the electric tea kettle in here. I've got like a couple other things that are just kind of comfort things, and having a mini fridge wouldn't be bad. But I mean, if I just had like a little separate space apart from my home, that would be the most ideal, because then it's still like its own little building and doesn't have everything that's in the house. Like, I wouldn't have a TV there. Not like that matters, but I mean, like, I don't know. There's certain things that I wouldn't have there. It's not just a place I want to go game and watch TV and like really kick back and relax in a way like that. It's more of just like, yeah, I there's not many things I would add that my current studio doesn't have. Like, I would add, like I said, maybe a mini fridge and some ventilation and good insulation and heat. And other than that, I mean, like, it would be everything that I've got here: a little library, spaces for storage, and then a workspace, and then a love seat or a couch or something. Anyway, I think that I mentioned last time, and I'll say again, like, physical space is really important for my artistic practice. Like, I didn't realize how important it was. I mean, I was still able to do what I needed to do without space, and that'll kind of go into what I'm going to talk about later on as well in the epilogue. But I mean, it's just, like, the space is so important. I can work without having my own space. I can find a way to do it. My work changes, though. My artistic practice changes with the space that I'm given to work in and how that changes. Because if I don't have anything, if I don't have any place to go spray paint, I guess I'm not going to be using spray paint for a while. Or I'm going to do it out of the trunk of my car like I used to. And that just changes things. I can't be out there for long if it's winter, if it's whatever, right? So, yeah, space is a really important thing. So how I would like to see my artistic practice be in the future, I would like to be more productive. I would like to make more time to try new things. I would like to get into oil painting. I would just like to be more prolific, more productive. I would like to expand my artistic practice into it's not just visual art. I would like to do more visual art than I do now, and I would like to take on longer projects. So I would like to push myself to be able to, to start to use oil paints, and that would help with longer projects, or at least, stage my acrylic and spray paint pieces or something differently. I would like to do more figurative work. Like I had done that for a little bit in university, and then kind of didn't do it anymore for years. I've done portraits since then, but I would like to expand to do different kinds of portraits, mixing them with collage. I've got a lot of ideas, but other than visual art, I want to get back into writing more. I want to combine that with photography. I want to put out and publish like a little collection, which I've been thinking about for a year at least now, and influenced by a friend of mine who published like just a short story collection, like self-published it. And so I'd like to do that. I was thinking about doing a zine. I just like all these things to me are like, oh, if I was a full-time artist, I'd be able to get all these things done. So the future of my artistic practice, is going to change and change and change in ways that I can't possibly foresee. But I would like to, be more productive. That's the lazy answer, but really, I want to be more productive. I want to expand the mediums I use specifically in like I said, oil painting very specifically is something I'd like to take the time to research and experiment with, and then eventually get good at and what have you. And just keep expanding my scope of what is art, what is the art that I make, and the subject matter, I guess, as well. Like subject matter, mediums, just everything. Like, again, I feel like I'm not going to get a lot out of this answer. It's just like, I don't know, like, and the space thing has to do with money, really. Money and available locations as to finding like an amazing space. So not 100% under my control, but that's the future of my artistic practice right now, is working on, I'm trying to see, can I get more specific? Like I said, I want to return to the human figure. That is something I do want to explore. I want to explore human sexuality more. I want to explore how we look at sex and the body and how those things relate. In some ways, I want to explore how sexuality relates to mortality and anxiety. That's something that I've been thinking about the past year and a half now. Relating it back to me very specifically. So that is a theme and a topic I'd like to explore. There's a couple exhibitions I had in the back of my head, and I had one on the back burner for years and years and years. That was the MK Ultra From My Mind to Yours exhibition, which is currently up. And I have some other things that I've been thinking about here and there for exhibitions, and some of them even just changing up my abstracts. I want to work bigger. So that is one thing. I want to work on bigger pieces, bigger abstracts, and more minimal, like Rothko style. Like I really find beauty in just using very minimal, like, shades, just using like one or two colors and having them blend a little bit in a certain spot. And the thing is that to me, it's at its finest when it's big. Like, to me, it makes a statement and it feels good when it's a big piece that looks like that. If it's a smaller piece, I'm just like, hey, I guess this is a red square, which can still be pretty. Like, I have, a very, very minimalist abstract art piece in my room, just black and red, and that's it. Like, and it's just like flat black, flat red. It's not like got a whole bunch of craziness going on. So I would like to work bigger as well. Yeah, I would like to work bigger. I would like to use a lot of these smaller canvases and stuff I have. I would like to get back into graffiti as well, on a canvas, like I used to, and on vinyl and stuff. I would like to find ways to recycle, or what someone termed upcycle, my materials that I think I can use. Like, some people do use paint markers, and they use their old spray cans that are empty, and they make art on them, and they sell that. And I would like to do things that are similar. I just don't have a good idea that is uniquely me enough that is also saleable. So that's one thing I would like to work on too, is eliminating as much waste as possible, working on smaller things and working on bigger things, finding ways to make more saleable art as well, not just art for me, but things that I can sell. So more design stuff, working on more jewelry, or working on how to market that jewelry. That's right now what I see as my near future artistic practice. So yeah, that's me wrapping that up. Moving on to my main subject for today. Anyone can do that. I have ranted about this in the past on my like FK Arts channel and the Artist Personal Journalist podcast. I don't remember how long that rant was. Couldn't have been more than 10 minutes, which is one reason why I kind of put it off and not doing it on the Artist Life podcast as a main topic. Something maybe I could have left for some quick thoughts or for an epilogue. However, I'm going to see how much I can get out of it, because I think if there's any non-artists listening, or early artists, or I don't know, I think that it's maybe worth talking about, seeing how much I can explore that. If you have been an artist for a while, especially if you have attempted to sell things in public, like at a arts and crafts sale, trade show type of vendor scenario, or like in Saskatoon, other places, the Fringe Festival, you have most likely heard, if you've done this once or twice, anyone can do that, or I can do that, or my 5-year-old can do that, or if you've exhibited your work. Basically, any time that you have had your work in public, I find that it happens way more in person than it does online, which is interesting, because usually I would find that people are more open with their communication online because of the anonymity factor and the removal of having to actually face the person you're speaking to in person. So I would find that I get way harsher criticism and stuff online than I ever would in person. However, this is one of those things that I hear way more in person, like, oh, my 5-year-old can do that, or anyone can do that, or I can do that. And there's times I do hear that online every once in a while, but not very often. And that phrase is just really frustrating and really annoying. For a couple of reasons. And I mean, to go and stray off the path of just art stuff and just human stuff, it's just unnecessary to say, especially if you're sitting at a counter or a table with all your goods that you have spent a lot of time on, money on, that you're paying for this vendor spot. You're there all day. Sometimes you're traveling to get there. Like, there's a lot that can go into that. Some people, you maybe just throw everything into a bag and go, and it's not a big deal. But for a lot of those people at those kind of like public events and shows, or if it was an exhibition, there's a lot of work that goes into that. So to have someone just say those things either right to you or to their friend, and not so subtly right beside them in front of you, or whatever they're doing, to hear that is not fun. I mean, it's just like a rude thing to say when it is, and again, it's completely unnecessary. But it also is very diminishing of that thing. I'm guilty of saying that too. I just need to say that right off the bat. Well, that's not true. I don't think I've ever said, I can do that. I think I've said, I know how they did that. Or, I feel like that's overpriced because I know exactly the materials they got and stuff like that. So no, I need to retract that statement. I don't think I've ever gone and said, like, I can do that, anyone can do that. It's been like, okay, well, that's interesting. Like, you're charging like $50 for something that you spent $5 on in materials to make, and it probably took you 15 minutes to make, and that's really interesting. And because I'm an artist who also buys those materials, I know and have been making art for years and stuff like that. Like, I'm very critical of everybody, if you don't know that by now, but I'm also very critical of other artists and artisans and designers or whatever. For sure I am. But this is one of those things that I just don't, it diminishes. This is why I got into the fact that I do judge people too. Because in saying, oh, anyone can do that, or my 5-year-old can do that, it diminishes automatically the fact that they made anything worth buying, or made anything interesting, or whatever. Because automatically it's saying, well, it's not unique. And for me and most people, I think that even if you're not processing it that way, consciously, at least subconsciously, we value things that are unique. We value things that are one of a kind, or that are just a little bit different than most things, or like, hey, that's something really interesting. And it's interesting because it's not like everything else. So I just find that even though it could be different than other things, someone just saying, well, anyone can do that, it's like, okay, I guess I'm not unique because anyone can do it. That leads to a larger conversation, for a lot of reasons. And I'm going to get all tripped up here, and I'm going to be going back and forth, and it's just going to look like a shattered a shattered windshield that's just like spider webbing all over the place and crisscrossing back on itself, because there's so many places to go with this thing. Like, it's just not a fun thing to hear. But also, again, there's a lot of work that people put into that sometimes. Also, I find a lot of the time people are incredibly ignorant to to what actually goes into art sometimes. So that sometimes they're saying it, and I believe that yes, you are correct. Almost anyone could do that thing because it is a very minimalist thing. It doesn't take a lot of manual labor or manual skill, technical ability, and maybe on top of it, it's just design work and there's no theme or concept or anything attached to it. So yes, I would agree with you, but I wouldn't say it, especially in front of that person, because that's just rude and you're without tact. And again, I've been guilty of being judgmental and critical for sure. But this is one of those areas where, because I have been making art as long as I have, I'm very aware of how long some things take and the work that goes into them, the mental preparation, emotional anguish sometimes, the physical labor that can be a part of a piece, also just the years and years and years of experimenting to get to that place. So again, I think that what bothers me about it sometimes is that people are saying it usually when they are ignorant of the work that goes into the piece. They're ignorant of the process, they're ignorant of all of it. I also take offense to this a lot because people say it about abstract art, and I mean that's my bread and butter. Like that's what I do more than anything else, is I create abstract art or non-objective art, however you want to label it, but work that does not have, it's not portraits, it's not the body, it's not dogs and cats or anything recognizable. Generally, I don't even have geometric shapes in there. It's non-objective. There's non-figurative. Like there's nothing you could point to and be like, oh, that's this thing. It is abstract, and not just like, again, I feel like I have to define abstract sometimes because new people are listening. But I mean, it's not something like surrealist, like, oh, I took a face and I made it weird. Like that could be a cubist piece. That could be just a surrealist piece. That could whatever. No, abstract work, we're playing with color, texture, composition. Those are the main things, and it's just not anything you could point to and say that's what this is. And because of that reason, like I mentioned Rothko earlier, and he's got a very minimalist style, and there's other folks that are very, like color field sometimes gets really minimal. A lot of my abstract work tends to be a little more involved, and now I don't know if I'd say detailed, but busier than minimalist pieces, and has more texture and other things going on. But a lot of people just think like, oh yeah, well, like a Pollock painting is just a bunch of layers on top of each other. Yeah, it is a bunch of layers on top of each other, but it's done in a specific way. I mean, we talk about fractals, we talk about movement. There's a lot of learning that had to happen for him to get to that space. Also, there's a lot of intention and purpose behind what he's doing and how he's doing it. Not necessarily each brushstroke or flinging of paint was planned, but in a way, you're using certain colors for certain reasons and whatever else. There's a lot of theory that can be involved in there. There's a lot of research that could go into it. I tend to not do much research. But anyway, so especially when it comes to abstract art or things that are, or like minimalist conceptual pieces, a lot of people say things because they just don't get it and they diminish it. Maybe it's because they feel stupid. Maybe they should. I don't know. But saying anyone can do it, they didn't, is the other thing. And again, I'm getting ahead of myself. I keep bringing up new points before I conclude the old ones. But I mean, like, when you don't know what went into a piece sometimes. A lot of people are saying things before they ask questions, before they read an artist statement, before they do any research. They're just reacting to it, which is good. Yes, that is the first thing you do, is you react to the piece. But then for you to, verbally vomit out this stupid opinion or whatever, an uninformed, ignorant one, willfully ignorant one, is a whole different thing. And then you walk away thinking art sucks or something, right? And you may not understand how involved that piece is. If you don't even look at a title. I mean, what if the title gives a huge, deep meaning to this piece? And maybe a lot of the work was not manual. What if this is just a white piece with a red dot, right? Like maybe there's a reason though. Maybe they're trying to, maybe it's a symbol that you don't understand because your culture is different from their culture, and that is a symbol of something else. And coupled with the title, maybe that really has deep meaning. Maybe it's a piece that is supposed to be, maybe it's supposed to be doing what it's doing to you and having you get upset at it, and maybe it's supposed to be turning art upside down and onto its head, and the context means something, whatever, right? But also, I mean, if I'm talking about abstract work again, like that's just where my mind goes and people say these things. Sometimes it takes years and years and years and years and years of work to get to that piece, and no, you couldn't have done it yourself. Just straight up, no, you couldn't have. And neither could your 5-year-old kid and whatever else. Maybe it has taken years or a decade or decades for you to experiment to such a degree where you can do that because you know when to stop. Maybe a lot of people get to a minimalist point later in life because they've learned this is all the piece needs. For me to get my message across, this is it. It just doesn't need to be really complicated and busy. That's actually distracting from my point. Let me try and visually say something that if instead of writing an essay, why don't I write a haiku? Like that's how I would maybe put it, right? Or one line. Let's just be concise. Let's get the emotion across with one color or something like that. And that takes time. That takes a lot of time. So someone can physically do the work means nothing. And you should know this about me too if you've been listening such far, that I really believe in concepts are king. And even though I'm getting more and more used to design work and allowing myself to do design work without as much judgment, I'm not judging others as much about it, and somehow including design into my definition of art a little more, I still think concept is king. I think that it needs to be, well, first of all, if there is a concept, it needs to be recognized. It needs to be put into the context, or the art needs to be put into the context of the concept. So that's another thing. No, you couldn't have done that unless you spent all the years and years and years and years of making other pieces to get to a point where you can say that one thing so minimally, if it's a minimalist piece or whatever, or even if it's a really complex piece. Again, some people don't recognize how much work it takes to get there, that sometimes it's not just, yeah, I just threw a bunch of color on there, I don't know what I was doing. That's hardly ever the case. It's just not. That's one thing that really, frustrates me. But also, that's, yeah. I mentioned earlier, and I cut myself off, and I'll go back to the point of, what was it now? When I said, no, you can't, like, anyone can make that, and I said, no, you can't. I wish I just followed that line of thinking, because I feel like I just said it, but now I'm confused about what it was I was saying. But no, you can't because of that thing, because of what I just explained. Like, it's not that simple sometimes at all, and even if you could make it, you wouldn't be making it because that's the thing. You didn't make it. That's what anyone can do that, but you didn't. That's what I was saying. Anyone can make that, but guess what? You didn't make it. Someone else did it. So that's it. Like, you don't know their intention and purpose a lot of the time, truly, and they did it. And it's gonna, even if you made the exact same thing, it wouldn't be the same. It could look exactly the same, because like, what if it was just like, yeah, I used Sumi ink and painted a 6x6 inch square black, and that's all I did. And if someone else did that, it might look exactly the same, but the intention and purpose is going to be different. And again, if the title and stuff is different, like, either way, it's not the same piece, even if you were to recreate it. But that's the thing. So much of the time, someone is saying like, oh, anyone can do that, so I don't appreciate that art, therefore it's not good art, or it's not art at all. And it's like, yeah, but you didn't do it. Like, you didn't do it. Someone did do it. Start thinking about why they did. I'm not saying that every time there's someone reacting to a piece of art like that it's this amazing piece that's going to blow your mind and wow, I told you so, you should have listened to me. Like, that's not what I mean. But there is something about art that I think, well, about anything, that you should take time and try to understand it. You can have initial reactions to things. That's just human nature. And then after that human reaction, you question why. Why did I react that way? What is it I'm looking at? What are they trying to say? Because they're trying to do something with it. And again, in my definition of art, communicating something is part of that definition. So someone is trying to say something to me or to a viewer. What is it? It's just, I don't know. Art is one of those things that everyone, especially visual art, feels like they can comment on too, because it is something that is just there. Like, it's not, so many people just, even if they see the technical, let's say we're flipping it now and we're talking about things that are just amazingly like photorealistic oil paintings or something. Someone can see that and be like, whoa, that took amazing skill. But what is it? Like, what like, it could be just because the concept doesn't make sense to them. Like, someone made this amazing, like, if it's like what's his name? I'm forgetting everything. Ron English? You know what I mean? Like, if it's just some like weird, if it's Ronald McDonald picking his nose, because there's a sticker right there of him doing that. And someone made a hyper-realistic oil painting of that. Somebody like, okay, they wouldn't say anyone can do that, but this is just aligned in that subject. They may not say anyone can do that, but they may not appreciate it, even though they can see the technical ability that's there. What else? Same thing with taking a photo. Oh, anyone can do that. Anyone can do that. No, not really. There's a lot that goes in a photo sometimes, and that's the editing process afterwards now is really what makes photos unique. As before, it was the skill in capturing an image in a certain way with depth of field and a certain focus. Composition still plays a huge role in photography. There's no way around that just with that medium. But I mean, that's something too, is choosing where to crop things. Right now we have the digital capability to very easily just crop things, cut things out, and Photoshop things and edit them in such a way with color and tons of things. And it's not as easy to make a photo as someone thinks. I mean, it's easy, but I mean in the context of a really great, amazing photograph. And it isn't, yeah, anyway. Again, meaning and themes are attached to that. Just this whole thing of anyone can do that. But, well, number one, no, not anyone can, period. And two, you didn't. Or three, so what? Like, anyone can do it, so what? You didn't do it. Like, I guess that's two in one. It's just really frustrating and annoying. And I know I'm ranting. Ugh, I wanted to not just rant about it. I wanted to have, like, a more meaningful discussion about it. I didn't make any notes for this one. But yeah, anyone can do that. Those are kind of my arguments to that, is that usually it's so what and no you didn't. And also no, not anyone can do that. There's a lot of work that goes into things more than a casual viewer would ever notice or believe sometimes. That things are not that easy and there's a lot of stuff going into it. There's years and years and years of work going into it. And sometimes I've said, like, it's not, sometimes, okay, example for me again, making abstract work, every once in a while, especially more and more nowadays, I'm going back to working with spray paint a lot more. And spray paint allows a lot of coverage very quickly. So sometimes when I'm making a piece, if I'm using a lot of spray paint, I can get done an abstract piece now way quicker than I could before with just using brushes. It has a different feel to it. I really enjoy it. So let's say it takes me a half an hour to make this abstract piece and I'm trying to sell it for $100 and maybe end up with $50 profit or something. Half an hour maybe is all it took me. And someone might say, like, oh, anyone can do that, or they look at it and be like, that didn't take very long. If they knew, it didn't take just 15 minutes, or it didn't take just a half an hour. It took 10 years and a half an hour. That's really what it comes down to, is like when you have started to make visual art, I really feel strongly that all that time that you spent making stuff up to that point has led you to that point, right? I mean, it's not just in that one piece by itself. Even if it's the first time I've ever spray painted anything as an artist, but I'm making acrylic pieces for a decade, it's still a decade and 15 minutes, or a decade and a half an hour that went into that one, because I still learned other things from making these other types of visual art that no matter what, they would help me, even if it's a completely different medium. Because they would help me with composition, they would help me with color theory, they would help me with just like, what is my personal style, what is that I'm trying to accomplish and communicate, like all that stuff. And it takes time to figure out how you want, it's like making a language. Every artist is maybe creating their own language with which to communicate to a viewer or an audience. So that takes time, and you're always developing the language, it's never done. And if you've been developing a language, you know, even if it's just for one, I mean, the rules change too. It's not just building off of what you did before. Sometimes you're dismantling what you did before and starting fresh. And maybe it took you a year or two or three or a decade, you know, to get to the point where you're like, yeah, everything I thought was garbage. I need to go in a completely different direction. But you never would have got to that direction if you hadn't taken that other 10 years first of doing stuff that you really realize isn't the direction you want to go in. So there's just a lot more that goes into that kind of thing than people may realize, and in so many cases, I guess the other example addresses, like, I wish I had artist names just like that, but I don't. But I've seen many things that I'm like, yeah, I don't really like that. That's just not my style. To me, it's still art. Like, there's a lot of people that work on things maybe they're just working with wax, crayon, and it looks like a kid's drawing. There's a concept and a theme, and there's a reason why someone would do that. Technical proficiency means nothing to me, so it's not the fact that it's not like realistic or anything like that. It's the fact that I'm like, yeah, it's just not really my style, but I can still respect it as someone who has made the art and know, even though it looks like a 5-year-old did it, a 5-year-old couldn't do it because they don't have the intention and purpose and the theme that is accompanying this piece. Something that was in the movie Basquiat, about the artist Jean-Michel Basquiat, was again, I don't know how true this is to life, but there was an interview, and someone was interviewing him, and they were very, I don't know what to call them, and the character in the movie, which was played by Christopher Walken, the interviewer, was being pretty condescending in a subtle way, or attempting to be subtle, but at one point, he asked why Basquiat paints these figures the way he does, and they're so sloppy and whatever. And he was saying, well, I don't know too many refined people, was basically his response in the movie, saying that, it's not a matter of my technical ability, it's the fact that I choose to do this for a reason, because it's reflecting what I see around me. So, again, concept is king. People that are saying anyone can do that need to figure their stuff out before they just jump to that conclusion. Because I would say the vast majority of time they are absolutely wrong, and even if anyone could do it, they didn't do it. So they didn't do it for a reason, and again, it's probably because their desire to do that thing. That's the thing. They didn't do it. That brings me to the next point. I'm just jumping to the next thing because I just brought up Basquiat, and that makes me think of Andy Warhol. And if you don't know that connection, then they did some work together back in the 80s. But that's the thing, is that Andy Warhol so much of the time didn't physically do his own art. And there's so many artists now that still they don't physically produce their own art, especially if their art is being put into a mold and made it into a 3D sculpture or something, and they didn't do it, they designed it, or maybe they didn't even design it. You know what I mean? If someone was screen printing stuff and they just, maybe that person didn't even draw it. What if I just directed it and I said, hey, I've got an idea. Can you make some soup can, some Campbell soup cans? Can you draw those? Can we screen print those? I want to do a whole bunch of them. I want a whole bunch of different kinds, and it's my idea. So I still believe that it's my art. That's how I view it. But that's the thing too, is anyone can do it. So in some cases, yes, anyone could have done that thing. Someone else actually did do that thing for me. It's still not theirs, and it is mine, and it still means something. Just because anyone is physically capable of doing the thing means absolutely nothing. And I think that's where I'm going to leave that. I'm getting all worked up about it. Yeah, anyone can do that is just this thing. I wish I approached it differently. I really did. I really meant to, honestly. I should have written things down because it would have slowed me down. I've been telling myself this, and I was really good the past couple of weeks about writing things down, writing notes. Because I wanted to approach it in a much more kind way and less exasperated, because I want to educate and correct people's behavior. If you're one of those people that says that, then I somewhat kind of maybe apologize for my aggression. It's just really frustrating being an artist who sometimes hears that when it's not valid. So much of the time it's not valid, and even if that statement rings true for 1 second, so what? It becomes the thing. What's the point? With that, I'm going to wrap up that main segment of anyone can do that. To finish things off, in our epilogue here, I'm going to answer a question that I received over Instagram last week. It was, what would you tell someone, a piece of advice, who clearly has talent but a very limited creative outlet? By limited creative outlet, I interpreted that as lack of maybe materials or space, which is why I said, in the quick thoughts at the beginning that it kind of related, having space and artistic practice and stuff, to this thing that I was going to get to now. So, what would I tell someone who clearly has creative ability, desire, talent, but just doesn't have the means to physically maybe make stuff? The first thing that I thought of was a quote from Brother Ali. Now, I was actually going to address this last week, and I forgot my quote book, and I spent a ridiculously stupid amount of time looking for this quote online because I know I got it from an interview that I read years ago, couldn't find it. Got my quote book with me today, so don't worry about it. But this is the first thing that came to mind, then I'll expand on that. You know, people might say you can't make music, you can't sing, you don't play an instrument, or you don't have an art or dance studio. But people learn how to make music with turntables, paint on trains, and dance on concrete anyway. It's a very empowering kind of thing when you don't feel like you need the resources that everybody else has. You take what you have and you make the best of it. And you try to make something beautiful out of what you have. So, again, that was Brother Ali, I don't remember how many years ago, just an interview. And that was the first thing that came to my mind, was if you are a creative person, I feel like most people wouldn't have this problem at a certain age anyway. As a child or maybe early teens or whatever, if you haven't been conditioned or taught that you can just do whatever, like you can just do things, then I think that you would have this problem maybe later too. But I mean, sometimes I have been around adults who've been like, what do I do? Like, I want to start painting. You know what you do? Paint. That's what you do. Like, if you want to start painting, then paint. Like, that's it. Like, some people, you know, there's all types of different kinds of artists. There's people that you know, do a lot of crazy amount of research and want to do photorealistic stuff, want to figure out the best method and do this and do underpaintings like the old masters and all this crazy stuff. And there's sometimes people who just do. And that's it. And they figure it out by doing. And that's kind of me. I figure it out by doing and not doing a lot of research. And that's, again, why I'm so attracted to abstract art, because the immediacy of it and the lack of... I mean, there is technical ability involved. I really believe that. But, I mean, the lack of... There doesn't need to be any understanding to do it. It's just... I'm choosing colors because it's the way I feel, and I'm moving in a certain way that's coming out of my body because of the way that I feel, and putting these things in a certain... Like, everything is just based off of feeling to me and not a lot of planning at all. But that's the thing, is like Brother Ali said, you make the best of what you've got. That you... And the fact that you wouldn't have all these amazing opportunities and resources that other people might have is an empowering thing if you were to go do it anyway. I mean, he talked about different kinds of art there. To me, I mean, dance is art too. So he basically talked about breakdancing and like people, you know, dance on concrete. You know what I mean? Or people get cardboard boxes and tape them down and then breakdance on that. You know, people make music out of turntables. People paint on trains as their canvas. Like, and I mean, a lot of those times too, if we're talking about money and finances, I mean, people are usually stealing their paint to do it, which I'm not going to condone. But the thing is that if that's all you have, that's all you have. And if you want to be a creative person, I feel like you are a creative person. Sometimes this is difficult for me to speak to because I feel that I didn't know I was interested in visual art until I was at a high school, because of the art teacher that I had was not very engaging. And that's all I'll really say about that in this podcast. I've talked about it before. I'll probably talk about it again. But I didn't realize that I was interested in visual art until later, and I found that through graffiti. I found my artistic interest through that. I was writing before that, and if you're someone who writes graffiti, I'm not talking about writing that way. I'm talking about like just writing poetry and stuff in notebooks, and that was my art then. But I mean, it's something that I don't remember ever being like, oh, I really want to do something, but I can't do it. This is not something that I really thought of, and it's not because I have a crazy amount of discipline and drive. It was just that I started just doing things with the things I had around me. When I started doing graffiti, I didn't think of it as art either. And then after that, it was like, oh, I work at Michael's and I could buy some of these canvases, and I already use spray paint. I guess I could use that for the background, and we got these paint markers, and I could just do that, and like, I don't know, or just do it on pencil and paper. I think that people have resources out there accessible to them, whether it be through a library or through a museum or a gallery. Sometimes they have things, or like drop-in centers like SkyApp in Saskatoon Community Youth Arts Program. There's different ways to even attain materials and space and even instruction from people. We've got the internet. That if you want to get instruction, there's a bunch of it there. People have free access to the internet through the library system. So in most places, I can't think of a city that wouldn't have that. But the other thing is that your physical materials, like, I mean, if you're a creative person, you're going to find a way to work with what you got. If you're a creative person, to me, you're trying to communicate something. So what is it you're trying to communicate? And how can you do it? Maybe all you have is a pencil and paper, so that's what you use. Maybe you... Man, I just remember... The other thing that comes to my mind is the movie Infamy, because NM, E-N-E-M, he was talking about how he just went bananas at one point, and he bombed his whole neighborhood, and he was like, man, I didn't just, like... He was saying, I didn't just do throwies and tags, I put up stickers, I did wheat pasting, I scratched the windows with rocks. Like, he was just saying, like, he just... Whatever was there, he just did it. And I mean, I think that this translates to when I was in university and I was working on that BFA. Like, if there were things that other people left around, I'd use them. Like, stuff I'd never seen before. Like, I have things collected here, like certain things that I used to scratch paint off of a painting. Like, there's certain things that I just collected. There were like parts of easels and stuff that I'm like, oh, I could use this to really get in there and like scratch this painting up, or like scratch this masonite board up, or whatever. You know, I looked at what was around me and I was very aware. I'm like, let's see what people left in the sink today. Let's see what people threw out in the garbage today, just for something different. And I mean, I had a studio space available there to me, a communal one, but still. And I had, you know, I had enough money to buy my paintbrushes and stuff like that, but I was still always searching for something else. So it's like a two-part answer, one's a non-answer, and that is I really don't think really creative people are going to have this problem. However, I find this with, you know, high school students a lot of the time is that they've been conditioned already to think this is what art is. Art is this thing, and you can't do that thing unless you do this thing, unless you know this thing, unless you have this background, unless you're doing this type of art, it's not even art. So sometimes I understand that there's a need for people who have a creative soul and don't even know it, that they need a certain amount of access, but to me that's not material access, or it's not access to materials and resources, it's access of thought. The first thing you need is to understand that you can just how to reach that part inside of you. And then I don't know how to unlock that, right? Like, I try to help students. Sometimes it's just funny when students that ask me, can I do this? Yeah. Like, why would you even ask me that? Like, can I use spray paint and acrylics? Yeah, of course. Can I burn my canvas? Yes, please do. Like, do you think I could like grab some grass from outside and use it as texture? Yes. Like, to me that comes to the same thing of like, people at a certain, like, some people just don't realize that you can just do stuff, just do it. Like, you're not hurting anybody else. Why can't you just do that thing? Like, whatever you need to do to express your creative outlet without, you know, harming other living beings, like, as far as I'm concerned, I think that's all on the table. You know what I mean? Like, and some people hurt themselves to make art, and that's a part of it. But I mean, it's just, I think what needs to be unlocked, the piece of advice I have would be, I don't know how to give that advice, because I really don't know how to unlock someone's creativity. I've seen people just bloom in front of me before, creatively, in the context of a high school art class. I've seen how they didn't even know they liked art, and I've seen them just, oh, it's amazing. It's the best feeling in the world to even be a little small part of that. But I don't know how I did it. And if I was a small part of it, I don't really know, other than just encouraging them and saying, like, yeah, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? Why don't you try that? I guess maybe that leads me to try different things. Like, if you don't think that if you think art is one thing, first open up your mind about what art is. If you're a creative person, think about, or if you think you want to be a creative person or whatever, what does that mean? What is art? What is creativity? How can you express yourself? Basically, to me, it all comes down to expressing yourself. What can you use to express yourself? Maybe all you can do is beatbox into your phone, and maybe you can layer beats. Maybe you can make sound art. Like, there's so many different, countless of numerous ways. Maybe you invent a new art style, or a way to use a medium no one's ever thought of because it's from the earth. Maybe all you do is photograph certain things and you edit. Like, there's just countless and countless of ways to do something, and they don't all have to be traditional, and they don't all have to cost money. I think just opening up your mind about what art is, and then allowing yourself to experiment, which also means allowing yourself to fail. I think that's super crazy important. And It's just one of the most important things there is in any creative endeavor, is allowing yourself the space and patience to try things, and that also sometimes means you don't have an end goal. The goal is to experiment that day. The goal is to try to express something. You might not even know what it is, or maybe you know what you want to express and you just express it. You just do it. You don't think about it. Skip the thinking part. I am feeling, now I'm expressing. Cut out the middleman. That's another piece of advice I would give. I need to go back to the question here before I wrap things up, because I want to make sure I actually answered it. What would you tell someone, a piece of advice who clearly has talent but a very limited creative outlet? So I don't know what that talent would be that I see in that person. To me, that would be conceptual talent, I guess. And I've told people things before. They said, I'm not an artist. And I said, yeah, you are. But like, your ideas are on fire. Your concepts are amazing. You're talking about not having the technical ability? Who cares? We talked about making collages and stuff, and they did. And we talked about, like, yeah, that's art. Like, I would just tell someone to open up what their definition of art is. That's the biggest thing, I think. And I could say other things like believe in yourself and whatever else, but I just mean, like, stop comparing yourself to what you think art is what it comes down to, or what an artist is. Open it up. With that wraps up the Artist Life podcast for this week. I'm going to say it again. I would love to have more feedback, more input. Find me on Instagram, Artist Life Podcast. Use the Gmail, artistlifepodcast@gmail.com. There's a Facebook page, again, Artist Life Podcast. Those are my main sources of social media. You can just, find a way, get a hold of me, ask me questions, make comments, tell me how I can do things better. With that has been my Artist Life.